Imagine a giant shopping cart. It's filled with everything Americans buy, from groceries and gas to haircuts and healthcare. Now imagine tracking the price of this cart over time. That, in essence, is what the Consumer Price Index or CPI does. The CPI measures the average change in prices paid by urban consumers for a basket of goods and services. The CPI is like a thermometer for the economy. It tells us if prices are heating up, which we call inflation, or cooling down, known as deflation. Understanding the CPI is crucial for policymakers, businesses, and consumers alike. It helps us make informed decisions about spending, saving, and investing. The CPI shopping cart isn't just any random assortment of items. It's carefully curated to represent the spending habits of a typical urban American household. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, meticulously selects thousands of goods and services for the CPI basket. These items are grouped into 8 major categories: food and beverages, housing, apparel, transportation, medical care, recreation, education and communication, and other goods and services. Each item in the basket is assigned a weight based on its importance in the average consumer's budget. For instance, housing carries a much heavier weight than entertainment. By tracking the price changes of these weighted items, the BLS calculates the overall CPI. The CPI is a powerful economic indicator. It doesn't just tell us about price changes, it reveals deeper trends about the economy's health. A rapidly rising CPI, for instance, signals inflation. Inflation erodes purchasing power, making it harder for consumers to afford goods and services. Conversely, a falling CPI indicates deflation, which can also be problematic. Deflation can lead to a vicious cycle of falling prices, reduced spending, and economic stagnation. The ideal scenario is a moderate, stable CPI, indicating a healthy and balanced economy. The CPI isn't static. Like the economy itself, it fluctuates over time. In recent years, we've witnessed significant swings in CPI trends. From the early 2000s until the mid-2010s, the CPI generally trended upwards, reflecting a period of moderate inflation. However, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 disrupted this trend. Supply chain disruptions, coupled with increased demand for certain goods, led to a sharp spike in inflation. While inflation has shown signs of cooling in recent months, it remains a concern for policymakers and consumers. Section 5. GDP, the big economic pie. To fully grasp the implications of CPI trends, we need to consider other economic indicators. One such indicator is Gross Domestic Product, or GDP. GDP measures the total value of all goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific period. Think of GDP as a giant pie representing the entire economy. The bigger the pie, the healthier the economy. GDP growth is a sign of economic expansion, while GDP contraction signals a recession or economic slowdown. Section 6. CPI and GDP, two sides of the same coin. CPI and GDP are interconnected. Changes in one can influence the other. For instance, a rising CPI indicating inflation can sometimes be a byproduct of strong GDP growth. When the economy is booming, businesses often raise prices due to increased demand. This, in turn, can push up the CPI. However, sustained high inflation can eventually stifle economic growth by eroding consumer purchasing power. Section 7. PCE, unveiling consumer spending. Another crucial economic indicator is personal consumption expenditures, or PCE. PCE measures actual consumer spending on goods and services. Unlike the CPI, which tracks a fixed basket of goods, PCE reflects changes in consumer spending patterns over time. This makes PCE a valuable tool for understanding consumer behavior and its impact on the economy. Section 8. Trade balance, imports, exports, and economic health. The trade balance, which reflects the difference between a country's imports and exports, also plays a role in the economic landscape. A trade surplus, where exports exceed imports, can contribute to economic growth. Conversely, a trade deficit, where imports outweigh exports, can put pressure on the domestic currency and impact economic output. Section 9. Connecting the dots. CPI, GDP, PCE, and trade balance. These economic indicators are interconnected, forming a complex web that reflects the overall health of the economy. A strong economy often exhibits moderate CPI growth, robust GDP expansion, healthy consumer spending, PCE, and a manageable trade balance. However, imbalances in these indicators can signal underlying economic challenges. For instance, a widening trade deficit coupled with stagnant GDP growth could raise concerns about the sustainability of economic expansion. Section 10. Current Economic Snapshot, a mixed bag. The current U.S. economic landscape presents a mixed bag of signals. Inflation, as measured by the CPI, has shown signs of easing but remains a concern. GDP growth has been positive but uneven. Consumer spending, reflected in PCE, remains relatively strong, but the trade deficit continues to widen. This mixed bag of signals suggests an economy in transition, navigating the aftermath of the pandemic and facing global economic headwinds. Section 11. CPI, your crystal ball for economic insights. In our increasingly complex economic landscape, understanding the CPI is more critical than ever. The CPI, along with other key economic indicators, provides valuable insights into the economy's health, allowing us to anticipate potential challenges and make informed decisions. By closely monitoring the CPI and its interplay with GDP, PCE, and trade balance, we can gain a clearer picture of the economic forces shaping our world. This understanding empowers us to navigate the uncertainties of the economic landscape with greater confidence.